want to call to order the Strategic Planning Committee meeting of Monday, November 5th, 2012. The invocation will be led by Mr. Johnson and followed by the pledge.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we ask for your guidance tonight as we come and do business of the parish. Give us the wisdom and the guidance to make the right decision for the people that we represent. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Councilman Malonzo and Caso have not made it to the meeting yet. Number 3, public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item, please get a sheet of paper and fill out for your comment period. Number 4, discussion of ordinance ZT 1211, reduce residential density across parish commercial zoning designations. Ricky Compton.
Yes, sir. We discussed this at the last meeting. The current zoning tables, which are in your packet, and at the top it's labeled existing, in our commercial zoning categories, mixed use 2, and crossroads commercial, residential is an allowed use, and the tables reflect the maximum residential density that's allowed in those categories. And currently in mixed use, single family, which is residential single family detached structures, are allowed up to 8 units an acre. Duplex and zero lot lines are allowed up to 10 units an acre, and multifamily is allowed up to 20 units per acre. In mixed use 2, single family is up to 4 units an acre. In crossroads commercial, single family is 8, duplex and zero lot lines are 10, and multifamily is 20 units per acre. The discussion has been a desire to reduce those allowed residential densities in the commercial categories, and so the next page is their proposed tables. And so in mixed use, it's being reduced, the single family residential detached density, from 8 to 4 units per acre. Duplex is being reduced from 10 to 5 units an acre, and multifamily is being reduced from 20 to 8 units per acre. Mixed use 2, the single family detached, is staying consistent at 4 units per acre. Crossroads commercial is seeing the same reductions, so it's from 8 to 4 of the single family detached, from 10 to 5 in the duplex and zero lot lines, and from 20 to 8 units per acre in the multifamily residential.
Okay. And the reason we're looking at this is because of the infrastructure issues, especially sewer, whereas we continue to get density at this point in time. We're getting very close to our maximum, and so we needed to take a look at the densities for these multifamily and single-family issues in the commercial area. And this is not in any residential zones. This is all the existing commercial. And so what the proposal as it stands right now is to basically reduce it in half in general. Mr. Johnson.
Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought, and I know we're dealing with the difference between commercial and residential here, but I thought we had reduced or eliminated zero lot lines in the regular zoning. Is that not correct?
Zero lot line as a residential product is only allowed in the commercial designations. It used to be allowed in, I believe, 1 or 2 of our other residential designations. That was removed, but it remained in the commercial categories.
So what do we benefit by allowing that in commercial?
I think that your commercial is going to be your more intense areas of the parish anyway, and if somebody is going to build a residential product in a piece of property that's zoned commercial, they're probably paying a premium for that property anyway, and so that gives a different product that allows a little bit higher density to probably get some of the return on their investment back. Your density is a little higher on zero lot lines because the units are a little smaller and the lots are a little smaller. you know, there's some advantages to that. You get a different housing product in your community, because right now in our residential categories, the only thing we're really seeing is 70 by 120 or 150 foot product and larger. And so if you eliminate the zeros from the commercial, we really don't have an opportunity to do any smaller lot product anywhere unless they're doing townhouses. And that's a single family attached product as opposed to detached.
Well, and the same thing with the 50-foot lot line. I mean, the thing that concerns me right now, I fully understand it as you go through these types of developments, or as we go through different stages of building or progress, growth, whatever you want to call it, that we would have a need for some stuff like this. My concern with that right now, as it's been in the past with that, is that without a parish-wide water system, and I know Fire District 1 is in the process of looking at addressing paid firemen and so forth and so on, that this increases that load or risk on the fire service, and I don't know that we're ready to handle that yet or not. You know, so I mean, I guess the question would be if there's a way to put some kind of stipulation in there. Do we know what the fire marshal would require as far as sprinkler systems? I know they do it. They don't currently require that on residential, as I'm aware of. I know they do in certain types of commercial. But if it's something that we're going to allow this, would we not want to provide something to help protect ourselves, help protect the other residents around there as we grow in the fire service, to be able to provide better service for this type of development?
I can answer it from one standpoint, from experience. When you do build in the commercial area, the fire marshal has to approve everything, and it's pretty strict on what you can do and how you do that. So I think they
Even on
do take
residential?
that.
I believe
Not-
that's
not
for
in the residential
single-family residential detached. If you start to attach your product,
Yeah.
the fire marshal will probably get involved at that point.
Any commercial.
As far as sprinkling or those other
Right.
facets.
And that's my concern. I mean, I don't necessarily want to limit what people can do with their own property, but I think from a standpoint of view of overall, how does this fit into the parish, and how do we provide protection for these types of things, and not only for the residents, but for the firefighters? When they drive up on a scene with a house with a zero lot line, and they don't have public water there, they're shuttling in water. That increases their task and their job for managing that scene tremendously. So I don't know that there's a way that we might be able to structure this to where it works for everyone. You know, not saying that we would want to stop it, but at least until the infrastructure is there from a fire protection standpoint of view. I don't know if you understand where I'm trying to go with this thing, but it's not putting the cart before the horse. If we gotta have public water there before we will allow development like this.
Right.
Didn't we pass an ordinance that said that a developer has to provide a hydrant and a line if they're going to do commercial in that area? Fire District is 3, I'm sure.
Yes.
It depends on where it's at. I mean, it's just like with a subdivision today. A subdivision today, if they don't have public water there, and I forget what the distance is, they have to put an 8-inch line, they have to put the hydrants down, but they're not in service until a later time whenever the water is there. It's kind of the same thing in the commercial areas, as I understand it. I don't know that if we got a development that's out in pick an area of the parish that's not, within a mile of public water at this point in time, we're not requiring them to go out there and run a mile of pipe, are we?
No,
Yeah.
but I can't fathom that you're going to see a major subdivision come in where each house is a 40 or 50-foot lot with an individual well on each lot. It's just not going to happen. It's not financially feasible. The only place you're going to see this kind of development is water is going to be available. I mean, I just, it's not physically possible, I don't think, to do a major subdivision without water.
Well, I don't disagree with you, But I mean, in that instance, maybe they would run the water, but I don't know. I mean, I think we need to be prepared for it.
Well, the other discussion we had last month was if you just go a few columns over where it talks about the minimum side setbacks, if during the same process we wanted to change the line where it says 0 lot line, 0 one side, 5 opposite, if we change that to 10 opposite, then our buildings are going to have the exact same separation as every single other residential subdivision that we have currently active.
I think that's an alternative. I would like to look at that. Yeah.
That's what that was the comment that was discussed last time, and we were looking for some feedback. So that's something we need to discuss, because that does the intent that you were talking about, and
Right.
making sure the fire service is
It gives them
addressed.
some cushion there between. So what you're saying is eliminate the 0 lot line and increase the one side to 10.
Not eliminate the 0 lot
No,
line.
you allow
You
it.
can still do it. One side of your property is going to be 0. It's going to be on the property line. You'll have the firewall and all that other stuff. The other side, you have to be at least 10 feet off the property line, which creates that 10-foot separation. In our standard 70-foot wide lot, you have a
Right.
5-foot side on each lot, and you have a 10-foot building separation.
And normally you'd have
So
a fence right there.
do we control that to where, like, your driveway typically would be your big separator if the carport's in the back? Well, what I wouldn't want to happen is a 0 lot line and two houses get together and put their house 0 lot line on the same side, and you got 20 foot on the other side.
No, we don't allow that. There's no common walls in a 0 lot line subdivision. They have to flip them. So if the left side of this house is a 0, that whole run, the left side is a 0 and the 10's maintained. I'm not going to pretend that they haven't been built in correctly.
Right.
And we've dealt with that, but
But you're also dealing with single-family houses in here as well. I mean, somebody comes in, they've got an acre, and they want to go in there and build 4 houses on it. Is that, they're under the subdivision ordinance at that point, right? So what are we going to do to make sure that they're not piling all those guys right there in one spot on the property?
you're saying if I have an acre of commercially zoned property
Right,
and I want to do 4 zeros,
yeah.
I mean, the plat that they submit to our office would have to be consistent with what the requirements are for that type of subdivision. So, the plat wouldn't be signed, they wouldn't be able to pull a building permit unless they met all the criteria that the code requires. On those plats that are 0 lot line plats, one of the property lines is designated as a 0 lot line. And so when the building permits are pulled, the plan reviewer pulls the plat and confirms that the line on the plat that's designated as 0 is the line that they're showing in their building plans.
So even if it wasn't a true subdivision, if it was just 4 houses on an acre, you're saying that y'all's review would take care of that?
I would hope so. And in my mind, any division of property is a subdivision. Whether it's a
We
major
can have a long
subdivision or a
debate
minor
about that, but-
subdivision.
Right. Okay.
One question, Mr. Chairman.
And Ms. Cazzo's coming in now, and I know she's going to have some input here. Ms. Lambert.
Ricky, on the mobile home park, I see we on the downsize from 20 to 8. Is that correct, or is that?
The mobile home park density is not controlled by the table. The mobile home park is controlled by the mobile home park ordinance, which there's lotting criteria that they have to meet. I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head what the density is in a mobile home park. It's high because the lots are
So
small.
on the existing, you have 20, and the proposed, you're looking to reduce it to 8?
That's for the multifamily. So residential attached products. So typically you're talking about apartments and condominiums. But yes, sir, from 20 to 8. 8 units per acre versus 20 units per acre.
And just to kind of better inform everyone, right now, for instance, on Highway 42, most of it is on Crossroads Commercial, or some other type of commercial. Right now, as is, anyone can come in and put 20 apartment units per acre along 42, which is not really able to handle either the sewer nor the traffic with densities per acre as it is now. So we're trying to find some happy medium to allow something but possibly reduce the densities until we can get necessary infrastructure to accommodate them. And if the reductions are put in these site requirements, then if somebody accommodates the infrastructure needs, then they can get a variance and build certain things, within that. So there's some limitations on the variance, but the variance can assist in that. And this is not something we're going to decide tonight, but we really need to take a look at this and take our time and get some input and come up with something, because this needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form in the next couple of months before a new building boom hits.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. If you don't mind, I'd like to review this a little bit longer, and you'll have it on the next
Yes, sir.
the next committee meeting. And that way we could
And
just kind of check a few things in our area just before we make a decision to bring it to the full council.
yeah, we'd like to ask, especially right now, the members of this committee to meet with Ricky. There's a lot of positives and negatives on each one, and as he was talking about, the 0 lot lines changing to 10 accommodates the fire service very much. I would encourage to take a visit with the fire chief to see how things are affected, and we're just going to need some more input. I don't want to have this, the only time we have input is when we go for an ordinance. I'd like to try to have a lot of discussions before, so we can move forward kind of in the same general area. Any other questions?
I'm with
Ms.
Dempsey. I'd like to take some time to review this and look at the things that are in my area. And I know I need some input from Ricky, because this is not something I'm terribly familiar with as far as densities are concerned. And I agree that speaking to the fire chief would probably be a really good idea as well. So I need a little time, if you don't mind.
Yes, and another thing, please encourage all other councilmen and other people to take a look at the zoning map and see where these issues actually fall in too, because we need to decide whether we want those densities in those areas. So just something that we need to look at cleaning up. Okay. Number 5, informational discussing regarding Ascension Parish pipeline. Last meeting, we had a discussion about this, and as you know, within the past few months, we've had 2 pipeline incidents and an incident at a plant with differing effects of these incidences, and started looking at parish information that's being received, and spoke with Rick Weber on OEP about how things occur and what we can do, and we found out there was very little. And so Rick has started to investigate, and he's going to make a report on the last incident and then make recommendations on how we can possibly move forward to protect the residents of the parish in the future. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is going to be a follow-on report from last month's meeting involving the 27 August pipeline rupture that we had just south of Lucimore. If we can get the slide deck to roll.
And excuse me, Rick,
Yes.
we had a speaker. Kirk, do you want to speak before or after Rick makes his report? Okay, thank you.
The objectives of the briefing is going to be just an overview of the 27th, August 27 pipeline incident, the current laws and regulation that govern pipelines within a parish, and then recommendations for future mitigation. These, on the next slide that you're seeing on the screen now is the companies that were involved in the incident. Air Liquide is the owner-operator of the damaged pipeline that was ruptured. Praxair is the owner-operator of the pipeline that was being installed. Will Brothers was the primary contractor that was installing the pipelines, and Drill Tech is the subcontractor to Will Brothers that actually installed the pipeline. This is the sequence of events of the incident. Praxair contracts with Will Brothers for the installation of a hydrogen pipeline just south of Lustamore to begin in August of 2012. Will Brothers subcontracts to a company called Drill Tech out of Clarksville, Texas. And what they contracted for was to do horizontal directional boring for the pipeline itself. My office called Louisiana One Call today, and we obtained a ticket for Will Brothers, and they requested that ticket on August 15th. And also, Drill Tech requested a ticket on August 22nd. There was no indication on the One Call tickets that any company responded to markings of their pipelines. Subsequently, what happened is that Drill Tech drilled between Air Liquide's 10-inch oxygen line and the 12-inch hydrogen line within that pipeline right away. Once
Yes.
the initial bore was complete, the ream was extracted from the right of way, and that's what damaged the 10-inch oxygen line.
And just to inform the general public of the people that don't know, when they directionally bore these things, they initially bore with a small pipe and come through, and then they have an auger type thing that comes back and enlarges the hole to accommodate the pipe. And in that process, they scored the pipe that was already located there. I think that was Air Liquide's pipe that was already there, and damaged it.
It was Air Liquide's pipe. When they pulled the ream back, the larger ream back, that's what damaged the pipe. Drill Tech then moved further down in the pipeline right away to continue boring. And then several days later, on August 27th, the oxygen line experienced a catastrophic failure. Called Louisiana State Police, and they provided us with their report, and it basically stated everything that I just told you. Louisiana One Call was again contacted. Inside your packet, there's a copy of the tickets from Louisiana One Call. To date, there's no report of any damage to any pipeline within that right-of-way, either by Wilbros or by Drill Tech, so that's still blank on the ticket. Subsequent inquiry, I called Air Liquide, and they confirmed that the pipeline was mechanically compromised by that ream that was pulled backwards through the right-of-way. See, make sure I catch up. Contacted Will Brothers, and they stated that a one call was completed, but that Air Liquide didn't mark the lines. Also, why am I at on this thing? All right. Contacted the owner of Drill Tech in Clarksville, Texas, and what he stated was that Will Brothers didn't provide him with any information such as ground penetrating radar, magometer reports, or anything that marked the inside of the right-of-way to indicate where the pipelines were.
And Rick, am I correct to say that when they did this boring in that area, there was no report from Louisiana One Call, or there was no one that gave them an idea about where anything was located there, or no research done, and then there was no data, electronic data, to locate the existing pipelines?
Right. I mean, that was the subcontractor to Will Brothers. What data they received from One Call is the permit to move forward. I don't know what schematics they obtained for the right-of-way, and from what all the indications that I got from Drill Tech is that the primary contractor didn't provide him with any other data within the right-of-way itself. So my concern is that even though you had a permit to proceed, did you do due diligence within the right-of-way to check to make sure that where you was going was clear? That's the major concern that I have.
And can you, since we're talking about the major concern and the reason for the urgency to get everybody is the number of, can you explain the number of pipelines that exist and where we're going at now?
We've got 1,200 linear miles of pipeline throughout Ascension Parish, and the issue that we have with the growth rate that we're experiencing now, some of the concentrated areas of residents are beginning to encroach on the pipeline, so we need to be diligent when we're dealing with them these days. So we've got a heavy concentration of all types of pipelines throughout the parish.
And we're looking at, and just to give you an example, off of Loose Moor Road, there's 13 pipelines.
Operated by about 5 different operators, yes.
And you know, and as it is right now, someone can come in and bore without a parish information, or without informing the parish, and as we saw before, without getting a detailed account of what exactly is there. So with the expansions that we're seeing in the industrial complexes in the near future, I think it's safe to say that the number of pipelines will be increased a great deal, and so we really need to be careful with this.
Right now, the way the regulation reads is that unless you're boring under a state road within a parish, all you need is an agreement with the property owner to be able to bore or open trench within a right-of-way. Now, inside your packets, you see the actual one-call report. And the only thing that I want to direct your attention to within that one-call report is the Will Brothers and the drill tech's coordinates for the pipeline. That was a concern that I have. The communications between, that's what you see. I know it's hard to see on the screen, but you do have a hard copy in your packet. The coordinates between the contractor and subcontractor are different. What did they actually use to mark the pipe with, I'm not sure. But when you look at the coordinates between both the subcontractor and the contractor, their permit is quite a bit of difference. And when you're talking about feet, that's pretty critical of where you put it in. So how they marked it, I'm not sure. That's something I still need to research. Local investigations, again, like I spoke with you earlier, Mr. Chairman, without a local ordinance, it makes it very difficult for the local emergency planning committee to move forward with any investigations. I mean, we need some horsepower within that committee, and we draw that horsepower from you and the council. The Louisiana Department of Natural Resources, because this pipeline wasn't a regulated pipeline, it was an oxygen pipeline, there's very little that they can offer us other than assistance to do some type of investigation. So,
Rick, can you describe which ones are regulated and which ones are not, and then describe the potential dangers of the unregulated ones?
yeah, anything that carries an EHS, an extremely hazardous substance, carbon dioxide or any hydrocarbon is normally regulated. What's not regulated is oxygen or nitrogen. So, but they're still under extreme pressure, and if they're located next to a pipeline with hydrocarbons or something that's flammable, it could be extremely dangerous. So it's those are the ones that aren't regulated, like oxygen. It's not even listed on the pipeline mapping system.
Okay.
And again, the LEPC depends on the U.S. district courts. If we wanted to litigate this for any company within a parish, we'd have to go through a U.S. district court with the U.S. attorney and assistance from the parish attorney if we wanted to litigate it. Researching now, we can go to the 23rd Judicial District Court using the parish attorney with state laws. We just can't exceed the maximum penalty that the state law provides. And again, there's no local ordinance that exists for this purpose within the parish. The next slide is the laws that govern pipelines. 49 CFR, civil penalty $100,000 for each violation, maximum of $1 million. And Louisiana Administrative Codes 33 and 43, that covers general pipeline safety, $1,000 per day for violation, and up to $10,000 for providing false information. And again, no local ordinance that covers pipelines within the parish. I don't want to make a recommendation in a vacuum. I like to approach the LEPC with it, but some recommendations that I'd like to make is expand the operational safety requirements within the parish, and do this by continuing to develop a local ordinance that kind of gives us a little bit more horsepower to do this with. One is to draft a permit, which you have in each one of your packets. I went to the Hot Zone Conference and spoke to some of my counterparts in other states, Texas, Colorado, Oklahoma, and that's kind of a first stab at the permits that we're looking at. But basically what the permit would do is that if you're installing or maintaining a pipeline, if you're going to bore under a parish road or adjacent to a parish road, you would need a permit. Or,
Rick, can you speak up a little bit?
it's raining. You require a permit if you're boring under a parish road, or trenching or boring adjacent to a parish road, or if a pipeline is within 500 feet of any structure that's intended for human occupancy, or a pipeline that's located within a high consequence area. Have the Ascension Parish LEPC perform as a subcommittee to this committee, and all permits should be reviewed by my office with a copy to the council and to APSO and LEPC.
Can you explain the differences in the existing application that we have for permits and your proposed, the added information that you'd like to put?
Right now, we have very limited permitting capabilities within a parish for pipelines. The only permit that's required is if you're boring under a state road within a parish, you would have to get a permit to do so. We don't have any permitting requirements for pipeline companies within a parish.
And I think one of the biggest differences is on page 3 on the new proposed one would be that you would have to enclose maps of schematic drawings of the route of the pipeline system and location, and also identify each pipeline that's there.
Well, it's
And I
not just
think
the
you had
maps
some
and
other-
and schematics, is we need to update the ESRI files or the IT files within our IT department. So if you can provide the shape files with us, we can maintain a current copy of what's being installed or what's being maintained in the parish. Secondary to that is that the night of this incident that happened on August 27th, had we had a permit in our office and the pipe ruptured, we would immediately had some document to turn to see who was involved. We didn't even know construction was going on at the time. So if we have these permits, if it's on file in my office, then we can follow up on it, and we have a 24-hour contact that we can contact to see what's going on. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to identify which pipe ruptured, but at least we would have knew the contractors that were involved.
That's important. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Rick, I guess one of the questions pops into my head is, what would give us the authority? I know, like the federal government, they regulate all this stuff, but as far as a local government and body, what would give us the authority to do some of the things you're talking about doing here?
Right now, I don't want to get into the technical aspect of pipeline construction. That's very heavily regulated by 49 CFR. I'm talking in terms of general pipeline safety and doing due diligence for that prior to boring or open trenching. So the documents or the laws that regulate that is 49 CFR and LAC 33 and 43.
So that gives us the authority to do some of the stuff that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, right now, I'm working with O'Neill. We're looking into the fact that we can do some of this in a 23rd Judicial District Court. We just can't exceed the maximum penalty that the state law provides.
What I would like to see coming from you guys at OEP is a draft ordinance, if you will, on what we need to do to protect ourselves and the citizens that's here from this type of event happening again. It's a good start. I like the information you've given us. But anything, you're on that end of responding with that as well. So, I mean, anything that we can do to get y'all pertinent information in a timely manner is beneficial to everybody. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see something brought to us, a little bit more information that we can move on with this.
The other recommendation that I would make is that while we're doing pipelines, we also to take a look at the fixed sites and transportation companies within the parish, that some of the alerting and reporting procedures that we need to look at. So that's some issues that's been raised in the past. So if we can modify it, let's encompass everything that we do and take a look at that.
And I guess condensing this, basically where we had the void was in communication from the constructing company as to what they were doing and how they were doing it, and then communication if there was an incident to the proper group, and all of that we can inform the people. And that's what we're trying to do here, is trying to get communication to go down and have information that can go to OEP, that immediately, if an incident happens, they have a place to start and contact people. Right now, we have no contact people. I think Rick had said that when the incident started and you had a call, you had to just start calling industries trying to find out where this was coming from.
Yeah, I got a call from a resident of Pelican Point, and then got on Gamma Radio and started calling some of the chemical facilities to see if we had anything venting, and they didn't, you know, so we didn't know exactly what was happening at the time. We had to isolate the area and try to determine what product was coming out, and determining what product that was took some time, and what pipeline it was.
I think the thing you got to understand too with this is that, call it fortunate or not, I mean, it was unfortunate the incident happened. It's fortunate it happened at such a time that they damaged it. I mean, there's been times when something's happened like this and nothing happens for years afterwards. They bump a pipeline and nothing happens, and 2 or 3 years later, line splits open or you have some type of failure with it. So I mean, it just happened that they damaged this one enough to where it didn't take long for it to create a weakness in the pipe to fail. But at least you would have something that in a certain area you could go back, or have some kind of database there that hopefully for a period of time you could go back and say, well, this was done in this area, and at least have some place to start investigation as far as what could have been the root cause of the failure, and go from there. But there's no guarantees that just because you get an application from one of these companies and that something does happen, that they're going to report it, number one, and then number two, that you're going to have see some kind of failure or some type of incident within a certain period of time afterwards either. So,
But
it gives us a database.
But this also gives us the power to fine them if they do not report it.
Yes.
You know, and so that's very important. So, or if they give false information when they're putting in the application.
The
So,
historical database, plus the ability to know who's on scene when something does happen. Pipeline transportation is one of the safest way to transport materials to begin with. It just normally only happens when you're excavating it, as happened in this incident. So that historical data and knowing who's on scene when it happens is critical.
Kurt, we wanted to give you an opportunity. You'd signed to speak.
Rick, I had one
Yes,
thing after you.
Okay.
Kurt Kiesling?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let him. I think Kurt was employed by
Thank
one
you,
of the
Kent.
chemical.
My name is Kurt Kiesling, and I'm a resident of Pelican Point. And unfortunately, Isaac kind of took place a few days after this, and it kind of disappeared on the horizon. So I was hoping to get a little information about what happened, and appreciate the report. It cleared up a couple of things. But I had 3 concerns coming here, and they're not a couple of them aren't exactly the Strategic Planning Committee's responsibility, but I'd hope that maybe you'd carry these things through, maybe even in any of the regulations or legislation or requirements that you might be planning. I guess the first one was we didn't hear anything about it from our emergency notification network. It took several hours before we heard what had happened, and so my basic concern was, did industry call anybody, whether it's the state police or whoever's supposed to be called when the thing happened? Because I think that they would, having worked in the chemical industry for 37 years, I'm pretty certain that they in their control rooms knew something had happened. Air Liquide did. Fortunately, it was oxygen and didn't create a problem.
Kurt, can we stop right there and make
Sure.
sure we answer that question? Rick?
The issue with pipelines is that they run for miles, so even if you're in your control room and you have a release, you can't isolate it quickly. So it could be in a totally different parish that the release is taking place in, so you have to find the rupture to begin with. You notice a drop in pressure, but you have to locate it, and normally the first responders are the ones that locate it for you, or the residents, because they heard this one roaring.
But in this incident, it wasn't a requirement to report it to the local authority. It was only a requirement to report it to the state police within an hour, right?
But that happens with Tier 2 facilities. That's the regulation governing Tier 2 facilities. You have to report to the state police in an hour. We don't have an ordinance that says that you report immediately to the 911 center or to OEP or anybody else. We don't have an ordinance that governs that. That 1 hour time that the state police gives Tier 2 facilities is inadequate at the local level, so it needs to be almost immediate.
Right,
So-
and that's one of the things that was your recommendation on that.
That's one of the things that the ordinance will address.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I want to make sure we
Right.
address all the issues.
I can understand the issues of being able to not exactly know where it occurred, but we have good relationships with industry, and I think that maybe even sidearm agreements rather than regulations, ought to be pursued to make certain that we have something within our emergency preparedness, a number that they can call and say, we think we have an incident within Ascension Parish. That would certainly have made it easier to have gotten some information. When I called 911, they knew nothing about it. They knew that some people had been sent out. It just, we get television notifications when there's a storm in Lafayette, and it interrupts my wife's television watching, and she gets upset because the TV goes off. For non-emergency issues in my mind, but we saw nothing on the emergency channel with any information there. So either the flow of information coming in or the ability to get it on public communication was my second point. The third point that I am a little bit concerned about, and I think I may have heard that, was, are we certain that there isn't damage along any other pipeline from this boring operation? As Benny mentioned, it was quite often these failures will occur 6 months, 2 years, 3 years later. And this failure in particular, because the pipelines would be so close to each other, if a boring event occurred, obviously the pipeline is going to be installed right next to it. The failure is going to react exactly. The oxygen line in this case could have ruptured the Praxair line. I assume that was going to be hydrogen, and therefore you could have 6 months from now a failure very easily once this hydrogen line is in place. And I can assure you 500 feet isn't going to be enough to stop a catastrophe from happening. So I guess one of my concerns would be, are we certain from the boring company or Praxair or Air Liquide that their lines haven't been damaged someplace else besides this one
Rick,
incident?
has there been, I do know there was some effort made. I don't know, not privy to what was
I
done.
contacted Air Liquide, and they're continuing with non-destructive testing of the pipeline to ensure that the integrity is still in place. So far, they didn't find any more damage to the pipeline, but they're continuing with non-destructive testing as of yesterday. That's the information that I had.
All right, were there any previous incidences or problems with the
With that
current?
particular pipeline? Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
Other
Were
than-
there any previous incidents or problems with that particular drilling company?
They've
Boring.
got, that particular company had 18 other permits within the parish this year, and as far as I'm aware, there was no other incidents with that company.
Okay, good. And Kirk, I guess to answer your question, we found out, in speaking with Rick and doing an investigation, that was very, very little that was required to come to the local governing agency. Therefore, it was a toss-up. It was just a crapshoot, so to speak, as to where it was located and what was in the lines. So we do know that immediately the company that had the pipeline knew that they had a problem, and if we put things in place that they have to notify the local OEP or whoever it is he designates, then we will know the product from that standpoint, and that assists greatly in the first responders.
Right. That was basically the thing that I'd like to ensure, that maybe whoever runs our emergency network, obviously we don't have enough requirements legally for them to contact the sheriff's department or something like that, but I'm certain that you can work with industry after this incident to get some sidearm agreements and get something in place that those notifications are made a little bit quicker than they were in the past. And that's obviously, relationships, I think, in those instances are far more effective than a new regulation. So I would just encourage that too.
And we want to assure people, and especially industry, we're not looking to regulate you to death. We just want to get information, and in case there's an incident, we want to be able to pass out factual information to the people as soon as possible. That's what we're looking to do.
And this is a perfect example of a specific incident that occurred, and makes it very easy to communicate and build these relationships with industry to say, let's review what happened, what could we have done better, is there something that we can put in place that allows us an informal and non-legislative type of a situation where we talk to each other more quickly and get the information out. So I'd certainly encourage that. And it sounds like I'm real pleased from what I heard tonight that the investigations are going well and that we're actually pursuing some more ordinances and things like that that will help prevent some of these things in the future. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerry, for your expertise. Rick, any, I mean, I think.
Just one more thing.
Councilman Lambert, Councilman Lambert.
Okay.
Rick, yeah, it's a great job on the application for the permit. But dealing with Louisiana One Call, they can zero in on center of the parish or all the pipeline right-of-ways. But the thing we're gonna need to be a member of their contact. And with our other departments that are inspecting the smaller lines and different things, it would most probably be best if you could look into becoming one of the members. That way, if anything comes out, you're going to be notified through these tickets.
Okay.
And you can zone out just pipelines or whatever you want in these. And I know you mentioned earlier about the inspections of this. I know we spread thin on the smaller things that we have out there. Are you going to take the inspection part of this?
No.
If someone calls in, or we're going to fall back on our people here?
What we discussed earlier was that it would fall under my office, and it would be just for general pipeline safety. The technical aspect of it is not the focus of what we're trying to do. It's just to make sure that all due diligence is done to make sure that the pipeline right-of-way is clear.
And that's great, but we're also going to need a visual, especially with these type of companies coming in and doing this directional boring. You need a visual on whenever they cross, make sure the lines are exposed, let them do their boring, but make sure that they do a visual on these so we won't have this accident again.
And again, that's the type of input that we'll need to draft any permit or any future ordinances.
And I think, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, that the incident has not been reported yet, or it's not on file with Louisiana One Call?
The damage,
Yeah.
they filed for a ticket, but I see no results of the damage. Maybe it's because it's a non-regulated line. I'm not sure, but I can look into it. But no damage has been reported to One Call.
So I guess the next question, do you need us to move forward? You going to come back, or you need us to move on this permit application tonight? Or
No,
what you need?
I'd like to.
Yeah, what we were looking at, Dempsey, is for him to make the report tonight, give you enough information and have it organized like he does, and for you to take a look at it, make suggestions and everything, and Rick is going to come, would prefer to come next month and bring forth an ordinance with accompanying documentation, and then we would then act upon it, either change it and act upon it, try to send it to the council, because we want to try to get something in place for the new year, because this is creeping up on us, and these things are going to be a big issue as we continue to go forward. So,
I just want to reemphasize, a gentleman just mentioned an informal agreement with industry, and I want to just reassure everybody that we do have an excellent working relationship with industry.
yes.
The CARE Committee, the Gamma Committee, and from really high level of management within industry. They worked extremely well with us. They provided us with information after last year's incident that we had. How do we correct it? So we do have a great working relationship with industry. Pipeline's a little bit different, so that's what we had to address with this one. Two questions that I was asked at the last meeting was what he just brought up. Why did it take so long to get the first call message out there? It was my decision on scene to delay, and because I had two decisions to make, it could have went wrong in either direction. I could have went to the incident commander and said, go ahead and set it off now, but we didn't know what the product was. Had we told everybody to evacuate and they started an engine and ignited it, could have been the wrong decision to make. So we had to make sure that we identified the product, and I'll take responsibility for that one, but we will look into the protocols for setting off the alerting and warning systems.
Okay. And I think the communication from the pipeline group and everything directly to you will enable you to make quicker decisions and get it out to the information, so.
We'd rather not make assumptions, we'd rather make decisions
Right.
based on facts, so. Other than being subject to your questions, this concludes
Ms.
the briefing.
I'm good. Thank you.
Any further? Okay, well, there's nothing we have to vote on. Rick, please come back with a proposal. I think you've heard a good discussion. I think you understand what this committee is looking for. And I'm very, after meeting with you today, I'm very impressed with all the information that you've gathered and the investigating that you've done. And I think if we can continue to move forward with this, I think we'll get what is needed to protect the people for any future things. So, all right. Appreciate you. Okay.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lambert, second by Councilman Cazzo to adjourn. This meeting is now adjourned.